For thousands of years, the history of humanity has been shaped by powerful civilizations that rose from small beginnings and became enormous empires. These empires controlled vast territories, influenced millions of people, created remarkable cities, developed new systems of government, and changed the world forever. Some became famous because of their unstoppable armies. Others became powerful through trade, science, technology, and cultural achievements. But every empire has the same story: a beginning, a period of greatness, and eventually a decline. In this journey through history, we will explore 5 of the most powerful empires the world has ever known. We will discover how they were created, the leaders who shaped them, the beliefs and cultures that influenced their societies, and the reasons why even the greatest empires eventually disappeared. Our journey begins with one of the most influential civilizations in human history, a civilization that became a symbol of power, organization, law, and military excellence: the Roman Empire. More than 2,000 years ago, a small city appeared near the Tiber River in the Italian peninsula. According to ancient legend, Rome was founded in 753 BC by the twin brothers Romulus and Remus. Although many details of the legend remain uncertain, the reality is that Rome started as a small settlement and slowly grew into one of the greatest powers the world had ever seen. Before becoming an empire, Rome went through 2 important stages. First, it was a kingdom. Later, it became a republic where political leaders and elected officials governed the state. During the Roman Republic, Rome expanded through military victories, alliances, and strategic decisions. The Roman army defeated powerful enemies and gained control over much of the Mediterranean world. However, success also created internal conflicts. Powerful generals began fighting for control, and political struggles threatened the stability of the Republic. One of the most famous figures of this period was Julius Caesar. Caesar was a brilliant military commander who conquered large parts of Gaul, an area that includes modern-day France. His victories made him extremely popular among the Roman people. However, many political leaders feared his growing power. In 44 BC, Caesar was assassinated by a group of senators who believed they were protecting the Republic. Instead, his death created more chaos and eventually led to the end of the Republic. In 27 BC, a new era began. Augustus became the first Roman emperor, and the Roman Empire was officially born. Augustus brought stability after years of civil wars. Under his leadership, Rome entered a period of peace and expansion, known as the Pax Romana. For nearly 2 centuries, the empire experienced relative stability, economic growth, and cultural development. The Roman Empire continued to expand until it controlled one of the largest territories in ancient history. At its height, Rome stretched from Britain in the west to Egypt and Mesopotamia in the east. It controlled much of Europe, North Africa, and parts of the Middle East. Millions of people from different cultures lived under Roman rule. The strength of Rome came from many different factors. One of the most important was the Roman military. The Roman army was one of the most advanced and organized forces of the ancient world. Roman soldiers were highly trained and followed strict discipline. The legions were not only fighting forces, they were also builders. Wherever Roman armies went, they built roads, bridges, walls, and military camps. These structures helped Rome move soldiers quickly and maintain control over distant provinces. The Roman road system became one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world. Many modern European cities developed around old Roman roads and settlements. But Rome was much more than a military empire. It was also a center of architecture, engineering, science, and culture. The Romans built enormous structures that demonstrated their technical abilities. The Colosseum in Rome became one of the most famous buildings in history. Thousands of people gathered there to watch public events and gladiator competitions. Roman engineers also created aqueducts that transported water from distant sources into cities. These systems provided clean water and supported the growth of large urban populations. Another major contribution of Rome was its legal system. Roman law became one of the foundations of many modern legal systems around the world. Ideas about citizenship, contracts, property rights, and government organization continued to influence societies for centuries. The Latin language was another important legacy of Rome. As the empire expanded, Latin spread across Europe. Over time, it developed into languages such as Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian. Religion also played a major role during the early empire, Romans followed a polytheistic religion. They worshipped many gods and goddesses. Jupiter was considered the king of the gods. Mars represented war and military power. Venus was associated with beauty and love. However, a new religious movement began spreading throughout the empire. Christianity started as a small movement in the eastern provinces of Rome. At first, Christians faced persecution because their beliefs were different from traditional Roman religion. Many Roman leaders saw Christianity as a threat because Christians refused to worship the Roman emperors as gods. Despite these difficulties, Christianity continued to grow. Over time, millions of people across the empire accepted the new faith. One of the most important moments in Roman religious history came during the reign of Emperor Constantine the Great. In the year 313 AD, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which allowed Christians to practice their religion openly. Later, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire. This transformation changed the cultural and religious identity of Europe for centuries. The Roman Empire was also shaped by many remarkable emperors. Some rulers expanded its borders and strengthened its power, while others faced difficult crises. Emperor Trajan was one of the most successful leaders in Roman history. During his reign, Rome reached its greatest territorial expansion. The empire controlled vast lands from Britain to the Middle East and North Africa. Another important emperor was Hadrian. Unlike Trajan, Hadrian focused less on conquest and more on protecting the empire's existing borders. He built Hadrian's Wall in Britain, a massive defensive structure that marked the northern frontier of Roman territory. Another famous ruler was Marcus Aurelius. He was known not only as an emperor, but also as a philosopher. His writings, known as Meditations, reflected his ideas about responsibility, discipline, and leadership. However, not every Roman emperor brought prosperity. Some rulers became famous for cruelty and poor decisions. Emperor Nero, for example, remains one of the most controversial figures in Roman history. His reign was marked by political conflicts, accusations of tyranny, and instability. The difference between successful and unsuccessful emperors showed how much the future of Rome depended on strong leadership. Beyond politics and warfare, everyday life in Rome was also fascinating. Roman society was divided into different social classes. At the top were wealthy senators, politicians, and powerful families. Below them were merchants, craftsmen, and ordinary citizens. At the bottom of society were slaves, who played an important role in the Roman economy. Slavery was common throughout the ancient world, and millions of slaves worked in homes, farms, mines, and construction projects. Roman cities were busy centers of activity. The capital, Rome, became one of the largest cities in the ancient world. Its streets were filled with merchants, soldiers, politicians, and travelers from different parts of the empire. Public spaces were extremely important in Roman society. People gathered in forums, markets, theaters, and public baths. The Roman baths were not only places for cleaning, they were also social centers where people met, discussed politics, and relaxed. Entertainment was another major part of Roman culture. Gladiator battles attracted huge crowds. These fighters became famous symbols of courage and strength. Although these events were often violent, they were an important part of Roman public life. The Roman economy depended on agriculture, trade, and taxes. The empire connected many regions through its roads and sea routes. Goods such as grain, olive oil, wine, metals, and luxury products moved across thousands of kilometers. The Mediterranean Sea became almost like a Roman highway, allowing ships to travel between different provinces. Roman trade connected Europe, Africa, and Asia. This exchange of goods and ideas helped the empire become wealthy and culturally diverse. However, the Roman Empire was not immune to problems. After centuries of power and expansion, Rome began facing serious challenges. One of the biggest problems was the difficulty of controlling such a massive territory. The empire was enormous, and communication between distant provinces was slow. Political conflicts became more frequent, and many emperors struggled to maintain stability. During the 3rd century AD, Rome entered a period of crisis. This time became known as the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire experienced civil wars, economic problems, and repeated invasions from foreign enemies. Many emperors were overthrown or killed after only short periods in power. The economy also suffered. Trade declined in some regions, taxes increased, and the value of Roman currency decreased. To solve these problems, Emperor Diocletian introduced major reforms. He divided the empire into smaller administrative areas and created a system called the Tetrarchy, where power was shared between multiple rulers. Later, Emperor Constantine the Great reunited much of the empire and established a new capital city. In the year 330 AD, Constantine moved the imperial capital from Rome to Byzantium, which he renamed Constantinople. This city became the center of the Eastern Roman Empire. Over time, the differences between the eastern and western parts of the empire became stronger. The Eastern Roman Empire remained wealthy and powerful for centuries. It later became known as the Byzantine Empire. However, the Western Roman Empire continued to decline. The western provinces faced economic difficulties, political instability, and increasing attacks from different groups. Several Germanic tribes, including the Visigoths and Vandals, entered Roman territories. In 410 AD, the Visigoths captured and looted the city of Rome. This event shocked the ancient world because Rome had been considered almost impossible to defeat. Decades later, the situation became even worse. In 476 AD, a Germanic leader named Odoacer removed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, from power. This event is traditionally considered the fall of the Western Roman Empire. But the fall of Rome was not the end of Roman civilization. The Eastern Roman Empire continued for nearly 1,000 more years until the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Roman ideas, laws, architecture, and culture survived and continued influencing future generations. The legacy of Rome can still be seen everywhere today. Modern legal systems are influenced by Roman law. Many European languages developed from Latin. Roman architecture inspired buildings around the world. The concepts of citizenship, government, engineering, and urban planning created by Rome, continue to shape modern societies. The Roman Empire was one of the greatest civilizations in human history. It was an empire built by soldiers, engineers, politicians, and ordinary people who created something that lasted for centuries. Its rise showed the power of organization and ambition. Its decline showed that even the strongest civilizations can face challenges they cannot overcome. But above all, Rome left behind a legacy that continues to influence the world more than 1,500 years after its fall. The story of Rome is not only the story of an empire, it is the story of humanity's ability to create, build, and leave a mark on history forever. Rome was leaving behind a legacy that would shape the future of Europe. Another power was beginning to rise far away from the ancient cities and kingdoms of the West. Beyond the mountains and deserts of Central Asia, across endless grasslands, where the horizon seemed to have no limits, a new force was forming. A people who lived with horses, harsh weather, and constant struggles for survival were about to create one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen, the Mongol Empire. The story of the Mongols begins in the vast steppe regions of Mongolia. For centuries, these lands were home to nomadic tribes who moved with their animals and depended on hunting, herding, and warfare. Life on the steppe was difficult. The environment was unforgiving, and only the strongest groups could survive. The Mongol tribes were skilled horsemen from an early age. Their horses were not only a way of transportation, they were essential for survival, trade, and war. A Mongol warrior could spend most of his life on horseback, traveling enormous distances and fighting with incredible speed. However, before they became a powerful empire, the Mongol tribes were divided. Different clans often fought against each other for resources, influence, and control. Among these tribes was a young boy who would completely change the history of the world. His name was Temujin. He was born around the year 1162. His early life was filled with hardship and danger. His father, Yasuge, was a tribal leader, but he was killed when Temujin was still young. After his father's death, Temujin and his family were abandoned by their own tribe. They struggled to survive in the harsh conditions of the steppe. These difficult years shaped Temujin's personality. He learned the importance of loyalty, strength, and leadership. Instead of relying only on family connections, he began building alliances with people based on trust and ability. As he grew older, Temujin became a skilled warrior and a talented political leader. He gathered followers and defeated rival groups. But his greatest achievement was not simply winning battles. It was creating unity among people who had spent generations fighting each other. Temujin understood that the old tribal system was preventing the Mongols from becoming stronger. He created a new system based on loyalty and merit. A person's position was not determined only by their family or social status. Ability and dedication became more important. This allowed talented commanders and warriors to rise through the ranks. Slowly, Temujin defeated his enemies and brought more tribes under his control. In the year 1206, a great meeting of Mongol leaders was held. During this gathering, Temujin was declared Genghis Khan. The title meant universal ruler. This moment marked the birth of the Mongol Empire. But Genghis Khan was not satisfied with simply uniting the Mongols. He wanted to create a powerful state that could compete with the greatest civilizations of the world. To achieve this goal, he transformed the Mongol military into one of the most effective fighting forces in history. The Mongol army was built around discipline, organization, and speed. Unlike many armies of that era, Mongol forces were highly mobile. Every warrior had multiple horses, allowing them to travel long distances without stopping. They could appear suddenly, attack quickly, and disappear before their enemies could respond. Their main weapon was the composite bow. This powerful weapon allowed Mongol soldiers to attack enemies from a distance while riding at full speed. Mongol warriors were also experts in strategy. They used intelligence, communication, and psychological warfare. Sometimes they pretended to retreat in order to trick enemies into following them into traps. They studied their opponents carefully and adapted their tactics depending on the situation. Genghis Khan also created a strong system of organization. The army was divided into groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 soldiers. This structure made the army easier to control and allowed commanders to communicate efficiently. The Mongols were not only warriors, they were also skilled administrators. After conquering new lands, they often allowed local people to continue their traditions as long as they accepted Mongol authority. They supported trade and protected merchants traveling across their territories. This approach helped them control a huge and diverse empire. The first major expansion of the Mongol Empire began with campaigns against neighboring kingdoms. The Mongols moved beyond the steppe and attacked powerful states in northern China and Central Asia. Their victories shocked the world. Many civilizations underestimated them because they came from a society of nomadic warriors. But they soon discovered that the Mongols were one of the most organized and dangerous military powers of their time. Their victories shocked the world and changed the balance of power across Asia. The Mongols were no longer just a group of nomadic warriors from the steppe. They had become a powerful empire capable of defeating some of the strongest kingdoms of their time. After securing victories in northern China, Genghis Khan looked toward the west. One of his greatest campaigns was against the Khwarezmian Empire, a powerful state that controlled important territories in Central Asia and Persia. At first, Genghis Khan wanted peaceful relations and trade. He sent merchants and diplomats to establish connections between the two powers. However, the situation changed when a Mongol trade mission was attacked, and its members were killed. Genghis Khan responded with a massive military campaign. The Mongol armies moved quickly across Central Asia and defeated the Khwarezmian forces. City after city fell before the Mongol advance. Their success created fear among many kingdoms because no one knew where the Mongol armies would appear next. The secret of their victories was not only their strength, it was their ability to combine speed, intelligence, discipline, and advanced military techniques. The Mongols used information from conquered peoples and employed engineers who helped them capture heavily defended cities. They learned from every enemy they faced and became stronger with every campaign. The Mongol Empire continued to expand across vast regions of Asia and Europe. Their armies entered Persia, the Caucasus, and the lands of the Eurasian steppe. They even reached Eastern Europe, where they defeated powerful armies that had never faced such a force before. One of the reasons for Mongol success was their ability to adapt. They did not depend only on traditional nomadic warfare. They adopted new ideas, weapons, and technologies from the civilizations they conquered. Their armies included skilled engineers, translators, and experts from different cultures. This allowed them to attack both open battlefields and heavily protected cities. Another important achievement of Genghis Khan was creating a system to manage his enormous empire. He established a communication network called the Yam. This network consisted of relay stations placed across the empire. Messengers could travel quickly between distant regions by changing horses along the way. This helped rulers send orders and receive information much faster. Genghis Khan also encouraged trade throughout his territories. The Mongols protected merchants traveling along the Silk Road, allowing goods and ideas to move between East and West. For the first time, many distant civilizations became connected under one political system. The Mongol Empire was not only built through conquest, it also created a period of communication and exchange between different parts of the world. Merchants, travelers, and diplomats moved across Mongol territories carrying goods, knowledge, and new ideas. However, the success of the empire came at a great cost. The Mongol invasions were often extremely destructive. Many cities were destroyed, and large numbers of people lost their lives during the wars. The Mongols became known both as great conquerors and as a force that brought enormous change to the regions they controlled. In 1227, Genghis Khan died while leading military campaigns. The exact details of his death remain uncertain. Some historians believe he died after injuries from a fall, while others suggest illness or wounds from battle. At the time of his death, the empire he created was already one of the largest in human history. But the Mongol expansion did not stop. His descendants continued his campaigns and pushed the borders of the empire even further. One of the most important successors was Ögedei Khan, the third son of Genghis Khan. He became the Great Khan and continued expanding Mongol power. During his rule, the Mongols completed major conquests in China and expanded deeper into Western territories. However, the legacy of Genghis Khan continued through his descendants. Even though the Mongol Empire became divided into different khanates, Mongol rulers continued to control some of the largest and most important territories in the world. One of the most famous descendants of Genghis Khan was Kublai Khan. He was the grandson of Genghis Khan and became one of the most influential Mongol leaders in history. Unlike his grandfather, who was mainly known as a conqueror, Kublai Khan focused on building a stable government and ruling a vast empire. In 1271, Kublai Khan officially established the Yuan dynasty in China. This marked a new chapter in Mongol history because the Mongols became rulers of one of the world's oldest and most advanced civilizations. The conquest of China was not easy. For decades, Mongol armies fought against the Southern Song dynasty, the last major Chinese kingdom resisting Mongol control. Finally, in 1279, the Mongols defeated the Song forces and gained complete control over China. For the first time in history, all of China was ruled by a foreign dynasty. Kublai Khan made Beijing, known at the time as Khanbaliq, the center of his empire. The city became one of the greatest capitals in the world. Under his rule, the Mongols adopted many Chinese administrative systems. They used experienced officials, developed taxation systems, and organized government structures to manage millions of people. Although the Mongols remained a separate ruling class, they depended on Chinese knowledge and institutions to govern effectively. Kublai Khan encouraged trade, science, and cultural exchange. The empire became a meeting point between different civilizations. During this period, travelers from Europe began reaching Asia and describing the wealth and organization of the Mongol-controlled lands. One of the most famous travelers was Marco Polo, a Venetian merchant who claimed to have spent years at Kublai Khan's court. His writings introduced many Europeans to the incredible size and wealth of China. The Mongol Empire also played an important role in protecting and expanding trade along the Silk Road. Merchants could travel across huge distances carrying valuable goods. Silk, spices, precious metals, paper, and new technologies moved between Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. This exchange changed the world by connecting cultures that had previously been separated by geography. However, maintaining such a massive empire was extremely difficult. The Mongols controlled territories with many different languages, religions, and traditions. Managing such diversity required strong leadership and a stable government. Over time, problems began to appear. The Yuan dynasty in China faced economic struggles, political corruption, and natural disasters. Many Chinese people became unhappy with Mongol rule. The Mongols had conquered China with military power, but keeping control over such a large population became much harder. At the same time, other Mongol Khanate faced their own challenges. Internal conflicts between different leaders weakened the unity that once existed under Genghis Khan. The empire that had expanded so quickly began to lose its strength. The decline of the Mongol Empire did not happen suddenly. It was a slow process, caused by many different problems. The same vast size that made the empire powerful also became one of its biggest weaknesses. Communication between distant regions was difficult, and different rulers began focusing more on their own interests than on maintaining unity. In China, the Yuan dynasty faced growing resistance from the local population. Economic problems became worse, taxes increased, and many people suffered from poverty and instability. Natural disasters, including floods and famine, added to the problems facing the government. Many Chinese people began supporting rebellions against Mongol rule. One of the most important rebellions was led by Zhu Yuanzhang, a former monk who became a powerful military leader. His movement gained strength and eventually defeated the Mongols. In 1368, the Yuan dynasty collapsed, and Zhu Yuanzhang established the Ming dynasty. The Mongols were forced to leave China and return to the northern steppe. The fall of the Yuan dynasty marked the end of Mongol rule over China, but the story of the Mongols did not completely disappear. Other Mongol states continued to exist for some time. The Golden Horde remained a major power in Russia and Eastern Europe for many years. However, internal conflicts and the rise of new powers gradually weakened its influence. The Ilkhanate in Persia also declined after political struggles and economic difficulties. The Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia faced similar problems. By the end of the 14th century, the great empire created by Genghis Khan had broken into smaller states. Although the Mongol Empire disappeared as a united empire, its influence on world history remained enormous. The Mongols changed the political map of Asia and Europe. They created connections between civilizations that had previously been separated. Their control of the Silk Road allowed merchants, ideas, and technologies to travel across continents. The Mongol period helped spread knowledge between East and West. Techniques in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering moved between different societies. The empire also influenced the development of future states and shaped the history of many regions. The story of the Mongols is one of the most remarkable examples of how a small group of people could transform the world. From the harsh grasslands of Mongolia, Genghis Khan created an empire that stretched across enormous distances. His armies conquered some of the most powerful civilizations of their time. But the history of the Mongols was not only about war and conquest. It was also about connection, trade, and cultural exchange. Their empire brought together people from different backgrounds and created a bridge between continents. Even centuries after its fall, the Mongol Empire remains one of the most fascinating and powerful empires in human history. Its rise showed the strength of ambition, organization, and adaptation. Its decline showed that even the greatest empires can struggle when they become too large to control. But the legacy of the Mongols continues to be remembered around the world. The story of the Mongol Empire remains as one of the greatest chapters in human history. From the endless plains of Mongolia to the largest cities of Asia and Europe, the Mongols changed the world in ways that are still remembered today. Their rise proved that a small group of determined people could overcome enormous challenges and build an empire unlike anything the world had seen before. Their conquests reshaped borders, connected civilizations, and created a new era of interaction between distant cultures. But their decline also revealed an important truth. No empire, no matter how powerful, can last forever. The strength that builds an empire must always be supported by unity, stability, and wise leadership. The Roman Empire and the Mongol Empire existed in different times and faced different challenges, but both left behind a legacy that continues to influence humanity. Their stories remind us that history is not only about who conquered the most land or won the greatest battles. It is about the ideas, discoveries, cultures, and changes that remain long after empires disappear. The rise and fall of these civilizations shows us the endless journey of human ambition. Empires may vanish, but their stories continue to inspire, teach, and remind future generations of the incredible achievements of the past. This was the story of two of the greatest empires in human history.